135 years ago today, November 13, 1887, Bloody Sunday took place in central London. The clash between government and demonstrators. Thanks for tuning in to Navy Don's History. Bloody Sunday was the protest against the conservative government and Lord Salisbury. Right or wrong, there's a lesson here. At the end, I will explain the lesson I took from this moment in history.
Hey yo, Spoonie here. Bloody Sunday took place in London on November 13, 1887, when marchers protesting about unemployment and coercion in Ireland, as well as demanding the release of MP William O'Brien, clashed with the Metropolitan Police and the British Army. The demonstration was organized by the Social Democratic Federation and the Irish National League. Violent clashes took place between the police and demonstrators, many armed with iron bars, knives, pokers and gas pipes. A contemporary report noted that 400 were arrested and 75 persons were badly injured, including many police, 2 policemen being stabbed and 1 protester bayoneted.
Well, that was the Cliff Notes on Bloody Sunday, read by Spoonie. Now, the rest of it is about central London, the location, and pretty much a little piece about what happened there. Nana nana.
Welcome back. Central London is the innermost part of London, in England, spanning several boroughs. Over time, a number of definitions have been used to define the scope of central London for statistics, urban planning and local government. Its characteristics are understood to include a high-density built environment, high land values, an elevated daytime population and a concentration of regionally, nationally and internationally significant organizations and facilities. Road distances to London are traditionally measured from a central point at Charing Cross, in the city of Westminster, which is marked by the statue of King Charles I at the junction of the Strand, Whitehall, and Cockspur Street, just south of Trafalgar Square.
The rest of the story is the full-length story about how the police handled the demonstrators during Bloody Sunday. I'll be back to tell you why this moment in history is so important.
Don't forget to subscribe. Both Engels and William Morris saw the events of Bloody Sunday and its aftermath as a clarifying moment, for the police clubs taught a sharp lesson about state power. On November 13, 1887, the Metropolitan Police conducted a savage attack on an unemployment demonstration in London. Marchers moving in columns from different parts of London were separately assaulted on the approaches to Trafalgar Square. They were beaten with truncheons and staves and driven into side streets. Their banners were seized, the poles smashed, and their flags torn up by policemen. Those who ran towards the square were charged down by police horses. Those few reaching it faced lifeguards with fixed bayonets. There were many arrests. 2 men died later from their injuries. The episode was immediately dubbed Bloody Sunday. It was seen as a turning point for the new socialist movement, for it introduced a harsher and more brutal dimension to their activities. The movement was young. The Democratic Federation had only been founded in 1884. It had soon become the Social Democratic Federation, SDF, and in 1885 had suffered its first split when a group including William Morris, Eleanor Marx and Tom Mann had founded the Socialist League, SL. Members of both organizations also belonged to the Fabian Society, also formed in 1884. Non-socialist radicals, Irish nationalists and even some members of the Liberal Party were also involved. A new movement was defining itself. In short, the situation was fluid. Only a few older people remembered the militant days of Chartism. Those battles had been followed by the years of Victorian prosperity. There had been plenty of sectional industrial struggle, especially by skilled workers, yet no socialist group had managed to establish organization rooted in the day-to-day concerns of workers. By the 1880s, however, the arrogant confidence of the British ruling class was shaken. The world was a whole decade into depression with periodic slumps hitting profits. Agriculture was severely hit, nowhere more harshly than in Ireland. Famine again struck, followed by evictions. Urban workers suffered serious unemployment. And there was resistance. Irish nationalists carried out guerrilla campaigns in Ireland and in mainland Britain. Workers struck in the cotton mills of Lancashire and coal mines of Northumberland, Scotland and Yorkshire and in several other industries and regions. Demonstrations against unemployment became common. This was the milieu in which the new socialist movement was founded and took root. Many of the leading light were middle-class intellectuals like Morris, Eleanor Marx, the SDF leader Hugh Hindman, George Bernard Shaw, Annie Besant, and Beatrice Webb. But they also attracted a crop of outstanding young working-class agitators such as the engineers Tom Mann and John Burns and the gas stoker Will Thorne. From the start they were out on the streets speaking from soapboxes by the dock gates of East London, selling their papers on Irish demonstrations and marching with strikers from Northumberland and Scotland. They suffered police harassment. In 1885, the International Club in central London was broken into by police and ransacked, and members were arrested. Street meetings in the East End were broken up. But they had some great successes. In February 1886, tens of thousands turned up in Trafalgar Square to protest at coercion in Ireland. Afterwards, John Bums, carrying the red flag, led a march through Pall Mall. Stoned by gentlemen from their club windows, the workers took out their class hatred by smashing club windows and looting Oxford Street stores. On Easter Sunday 1887, the Socialists participated in what Engels called without exception the largest meeting we've ever had here. Some 150,000 converged on Hyde Park to hear speeches from 15 platforms. The issue was the renewal of the Crimes Bill, which would remove all civil rights from the Irish. The signs of the rapid growth of militancy on the streets was too much for the rulers. In the late summer, they stepped up their attacks. A new Tory government was determined to establish its authority on the streets. The new Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, the former colonial governor Sir Charles Warren, started by banning all meetings in Trafalgar Square. His officers carried out weeks of harassment and summary arrests throughout the capital. The Radicals and the Irish called a demonstration in Trafalgar Square for 13th of November. Socialists threw themselves into this activity with gusto, forming contingents in various parts of the East End. Warren prepared very carefully. Thousands of police armed with long truncheons, cutlasses and firearms were massed in the square. There were also squads in the streets round it. The lifeguards were there for backup and further intimidation. A neutral observer watched the assault in the square. He reported the arrest of the radical socialist MP for Lanark, Cunningham Graham. After Mr. Graham's arrest was complete, one policeman after another, two certainly, but I think no more, stepped up from behind and struck him on the head from behind with a violence and brutality which were shocking to behold. Even after this, and when some 5 or 6 other police were dragging him into the square, another from behind seized him most needlessly by the hair and dragged his head back, and in that condition he was forced many yards. This episode did not intimidate the movement. It seemed inspired to retaliate. Demonstrators were out in force the next Sunday and subjected to further wild police attacks. During such an attack, a young radical clerk, Alfred Linnell, was run down by a police horse, dying later in hospital. His funeral in December became a major political event organized by the Socialists. It was attended by most of the leading figures on the left, but more importantly by tens of thousands of East Londoners on a procession which was lined by many thousands more. Both Engels and William Morris saw the events of Bloody Sunday and its aftermath as a clarifying moment, for the police clubs taught a sharp lesson about state power. Most participants had been wise to run away to avoid injury and arrest. Some would keep on running in the belief that the only way to reform the system was by working peaceably from the inside. The revolutionary socialist conclusion was to continue confrontation but to win larger numbers and develop better methods to defeat the system. In Morris's words at Alfred Linnell's graveside, "It is our business to begin to organize for the purpose of seeing that such things shall not happen, to try and make this earth a beautiful and happy place."
Okay, welcome back. Now I want to explain why this moment in history is important, because it reflects to what is happening nowadays. People all across the world are getting fed up with their governments. And if we don't learn from this mistake, how they ended up peacefully coming to a conclusion, learn from that part, we may redeem the same Bloody Sunday. Now, this has been Nobly. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And Unanimous. Manja Manja.